"It's just the two of us here," alien Navigator smirked, closing the door to her cabin. "So this is what the Milky Way looks like from here," Jake Harrison mused, leaning against the viewport of the cargo ship Stellar Nomad. The vast expanse of stars stretched before him, a glittering tapestry against the void. After 3 weeks aboard the alien vessel, he still found himself captivated by the view. "Impressive, isn't it?" came a melodic voice from behind him, "though I'd argue it looks better from the navigation deck." Jake turned to find Nyara Navari, the ship's navigator, standing in the corridor. Her snow-white hair was tied in 2 playful ponytails that framed her face, highlighting those striking violet eyes that seemed to hold galaxies within them. Her pale pink skin had a subtle luminescence under the ship's lighting, and her beige jumpsuit hugged her slender figure in ways that made concentrating on star charts particularly challenging. "I wouldn't know," Jake replied with a half-smile. "Haven't had the pleasure of that view yet." Nyara's lips curled into a mischievous smile. "Perhaps that could be arranged. I'm off duty in an hour. Navigation systems need recalibration for tomorrow's jump. Could use an extra pair of hands." Jake ran a hand through his thick blonde hair, slightly tousled after a long day of hauling cargo. As the newest and only human crew member aboard the Stellar Nomad, he'd been working twice as hard to prove his worth. "Captain Dorn wouldn't mind. What the captain doesn't know won't hurt him," Nyara winked. "Besides, you've been aboard 3 weeks and haven't seen the heart of the ship. Consider it educational." An hour later, Jake found himself following Nyara through the ship's winding corridors. The Stellar Nomad was a patchwork vessel, built and rebuilt over decades, with technology from a dozen different worlds. Unlike the sleek military vessels of the Galactic Coalition, cargo haulers like this were functional rather than beautiful, except for the navigation deck, apparently. When the doors slid open, Jake couldn't help but whistle in appreciation. The circular room was dominated by a massive holographic display of their current sector. Stars and planets rotating slowly in 3 dimensions. The ceiling was transparent, offering an unobstructed view of actual space above. "This is something else," Jake admitted, walking around the central console. "Best seat in the house," Nyara agreed, sliding into her chair and patting the one beside her. "Come on, I'll show you how we plot jumps through the Veil Nebula." For the next 2 hours, Jake found himself genuinely fascinated by Nyara's explanations of interstellar navigation. Unlike Earth's primitive systems, the Nomad used quantum entangled particles to calculate precise jumps through folded space. Nyara's fingers danced across the controls with practiced ease, her explanations punctuated by occasional brushes against his arm that seemed less than accidental. "And that," she concluded, "is how we'll make it through the Cygnus Cross without getting pulled into a gravity well." "Impressive," Jake said, genuinely meaning it. "On Earth, we'd need weeks to calculate what you just did in minutes." "Humans are catching up quickly, though," Nyara replied, swiveling her chair to face him directly. "Your species adapts faster than any I've encountered. It's, intriguing." There was something in her voice that made Jake's pulse quicken. The navigation deck's lighting had dimmed automatically as ship's night cycle began, casting everything in a soft blue glow that made Nyara's violet eyes seem to shine. "I should probably head back to my quarters," Jake said, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting. "Early shift tomorrow." "Or," Nyara suggested, her voice dropping to a softer register, "you could come see my cabin. I've got some Arcturian whiskey that pairs wonderfully with stories about Earth." Jake hesitated. The attraction had been building between them since his first day aboard, but fraternizing with crew members on long hauls was complicated at best. Still, there was something about Nyara that pulled at him, her intelligence, her confidence, the way she looked at him like he was a puzzle she was eager to solve. "Just stories and whiskey?" he asked with a raised eyebrow. Nyara's laugh was like wind chimes. "To start with, I make no promises about where the night leads." 20 minutes later, they were in Nyara's cabin, a cozy space that somehow managed to feel both alien and familiar. Star charts decorated the walls alongside what looked like abstract art, but were actually topographical maps of distant worlds. A small viewport offered a slice of the cosmos, and her bed, larger than the standard crew bunks, was covered in fabrics of deep blues and purples. The Arcturian whiskey burned pleasantly, tasting of cinnamon and something Jake couldn't quite identify. They traded stories, Jake about Earth's oceans and mountains, Nyara about the floating cities of her homeworld, Navaria. "So," Nyara said after their second drink, setting her glass aside. What really brought you out here, Jake Harrison? Humans don't typically sign on for long-haul cargo runs in unexplored space? Jake shrugged, trying to appear casual. Same as anyone. Wanted to see the stars, make some credits, have adventures worth telling about someday. Nyara hummed, clearly unconvinced. And it has nothing to do with being the only human in the Cygnus sector? Nothing to do with the Coalition's interest in this region? Jake's muscles tensed slightly. What are you suggesting? Nothing sinister, Nyara assured him, moving to sit beside him on her bed, just that you might have more interesting stories than you're sharing. Their conversation about the navigation route had ended, and Jake was about to make an excuse to leave, when Nyara gently but firmly pushed him back onto her bed. The move was unexpected, but not unwelcome. She took his hand in hers, her skin warm against his. "It's just the two of us here," she said with a sly smile, reaching behind her to press the door control. The cabin door slid shut with a soft hiss, locking automatically. No captains, no crew, no coalition, no hegemony, just us. Jake froze momentarily, his blue eyes meeting her violet ones. The tension that had been building between them for weeks crystallized in that moment. He was alone in the cabin of the most captivating woman he'd ever met, human or otherwise, and she was looking at him with unmistakable intent. "I'm not sure this is a good idea," he said, though his body was already betraying his words. "The best ideas rarely are," Nyara replied, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest through his brown shirt. "But I've been watching you, Jake Harrison. The way you move, the way you think. You're different from the humans I've met before." "How many humans have you met?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Enough to know I want to get to know this one better," she whispered, leaning closer. "Much better." As her lips met his, Jake's last coherent thought was that whatever complications this might bring tomorrow, right now, in this moment, the stars themselves couldn't have pulled him away. Morning came aboard the Stellar Nomad with the artificial brightening of cabin lights, simulating dawn across the vessel. Jake stirred slowly, momentarily disoriented by unfamiliar surroundings, until memories of the previous night flooded back. Beside him, Nyara slept peacefully, her white hair splayed across the pillow like cosmic rays, one arm draped possessively across his chest. Jake studied her features in the soft light. There was something almost ethereal about Navarians. Their skin had a translucent quality that seemed to capture and reflect light differently than human skin. Up close, he could see faint patterns beneath her surface, like delicate circuitry or perhaps natural bioluminescence. He gently traced a finger along her arm, marveling at how something so alien could feel so familiar. Last night had been unexpected, different in some ways from being with a human woman, yet fundamentally the same in all the ways that mattered. The connection, the heat, the shared breath, and whispered words, these things, it seemed, transcended species. Nyara's eyes fluttered open, violet irises focusing on him with surprising clarity for someone just waking. "You're still here," she murmured, sounding pleased. "I half expected you to sneak away before morning cycle." "Thought about it," Jake admitted with a lazy smile, "but your bed's more comfortable than mine." She laughed softly, stretching like a cat. "A practical human. I like that." Jake's hand continued its exploration, tracing the curve of her shoulder. "Last night was informative," she suggested with a mischievous glint. "I was going to say amazing, but sure, informative works too." He propped himself up on one elbow. "Though I'm pretty sure what we did violates about a dozen ship regulations." Nyara waved dismissively. "Captain Dorn pretends to care about fraternization, but half the crew is sleeping with the other half. Space is vast and lonely." Her fingers walked playfully up his chest. "Besides, I outrank you, so technically I'm the one breaking regulations." Jake caught her hand, suddenly serious. "Is that why you brought me here? Professional curiosity about humans?" Something flickered across her face, too quick to identify. "Would that bother you if it were true?" "Depends on what kind of data you're collecting," he replied carefully. Nyara sat up, pulling the sheet around her. "You're suspicious this morning." "Force of habit." Jake reached for his scattered clothes. "Humans tend to be cautious when things seem too good to be true." She watched him dressed with an unreadable expression. And I'm too good to be true? A beautiful alien navigator inviting the only human aboard to her bed? Yeah, that raises some flags. Nyara's laugh held a sharp edge. Your species has such an ego. Not everything is about Earth or humans, Jake. He paused, shirt half-buttoned. Never said it was. You didn't have to. She rose from the bed, wrapping herself in a silken robe the color of deep space. Your coalition sent you out here for a reason, just as my people have their interests. Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cabin's temperature. What exactly are you suggesting? Instead of answering, Nyara moved to her desk and pressed her palm against a hidden panel. A compartment slid open, revealing a data crystal that glowed with an inner blue light. She held it up between delicate fingers. Do you know what this is? Jake shook his head slowly, though something about the crystal seemed vaguely familiar. This contains schematics for Earth's orbital defense grid, she said matter-of-factly, including blind spots, patrol schedules, and emergency protocols. The room seemed to tilt slightly. How the hell did you get that? The same way I get everything. I'm very good at navigating systems, not just starships. Her voice remained calm, almost conversational. Your coalition's encryption is impressive, but not impenetrable? Jake's hand instinctively moved toward his hip where a sidearm would be if he were on duty. The gesture wasn't lost on Nyara, who smiled sadly. I'm not your enemy, Jake. People with classified Earth defense information rarely qualify as friends, he countered, finishing with his clothes and standing at full height. At 6'2", he towered over her slender form. What's your game here, Nyara? She replaced the crystal in its hiding place. No game, just mutual interests potentially aligning. She approached him without fear, despite the tension radiating from his body. Last night wasn't about this. That was, something else entirely. Something real, he asked, wanting to believe her despite his training. As real as anything can be between two people from different worlds. She placed a hand on his chest, directly over his heart. Your pulse is racing. Are you afraid of me now? Should I be? Her violet eyes held his. That depends on whether you're here as a cargo handler or as something else entirely. The implication hung between them, heavy as a neutron star. Jake knew he should report this immediately. An alien with Earth defense schematics was a critical security breach. But something held him back. The way she looked at him suggested she knew far more than she was revealing. We should talk about this, he finally said. But not here, not now. Nyara nodded, stepping back. Tonight, same time, I'll explain everything. She hesitated, then added, what happened between us was not part of any agenda, Jake. That was just us. As he left her cabin, Jake's mind raced with possibilities, none of them comforting. What had started as an unexpected night of passion had transformed into something far more complicated. One thing was certain. Nyara Navari was not simply the ship's navigator, and whatever game was being played aboard the Stellar Nomad, he was now irrevocably part of it. Jake spent the day in a fog, mechanically going through his cargo duties, while his mind raced with questions about Nyara and the data crystal. The Stellar Nomad was scheduled to make a supply drop at Proxima Station before continuing to the Outer Rim, which meant at least 12 hours of inventory checks and manifest updates. You look like you've been hit by a gravity wave, remarked Krell, a burly Taurian with leathery gray skin who served as cargo chief. Late night, Jake forced a smile. Something like that. Let me guess, Krell rumbled, his four nostrils flaring in amusement. Navigator's cabin. Jake nearly dropped the scanner he was holding. How did you... Ship this size, everyone knows everyone's business. Krell shrugged massive shoulders. Plus, Navarians give off pheromones when they're interested. Most species can't detect them, but Taurians can smell emotions. That's, disturbing, Jake muttered, feeling his face flush. Relax, human. Your species' mating habits aren't that interesting to the rest of us. Krell's mouth stretched in what passed for a grin. Though I've got 20 credits writing on whether you'll last the week or burn out like the last human who tried to keep up with a Navarian. Jake was saved from responding by the sudden wail of the ship's alarm system. Red emergency lights began pulsing throughout the cargo bay. "What the hell?" Krell dropped his manifest pad, head swiveling toward the intercom. Captain Dorn's gravelly voice crackled through the speakers. "All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. Hegemony vessels approaching from Sector 7. All hands to battle stations." Jake's blood ran cold. The Hegemony, a coalition of militaristic alien species, had been expanding their territory aggressively for years, often targeting civilian vessels for inspection that usually ended with confiscated cargo and sometimes worse. "Damn it," Krell growled. "We're carrying medical supplies for the outer colonies. If they take those battle stations?" Jake questioned as they rushed toward the exit. "On a cargo hauler?" "Nomad has some surprises," Krell replied cryptically. "Get to your designated emergency position." Jake's emergency position was auxiliary navigation, right next to Nyara. He sprinted through corridors now bathed in pulsing red light, crew members rushing in all directions. When he reached the navigation deck, Nyara was already there, her fingers flying across control panels. "3 Hegemony cutters," she announced without looking up. "Corvette class, they're jamming communications." "How did they find us?" Jake demanded, sliding into the seat beside her. "We're running silent through neutral space." Nyara's eyes met his briefly. "That's the question, isn't it?" Before he could respond, Captain Dorn strode onto the bridge, a Centaurian with metallic blue skin and 4 arms. Dorn had the bearing of someone who'd seen too many battles. "Navari, plot an emergency jump," he ordered. "Harrison, take weapons control." "Weapons control?" Jake repeated, surprised. "Those concealed turrets aren't for show," Dorn snapped. "You scored highest in the combat simulations during orientation. Unless that was luck?" "No, sir," Jake replied, activating the weapons console that had appeared from a hidden compartment. His coalition training was supposed to be confidential, but apparently not as secret as he'd thought. "We can't jump yet," Nyara reported. "They've deployed a gravity net. We need to get at least 50,000 kilometers clear." "Then we fight our way out," Dorn declared. "Harrison, target their propulsion systems only. We disable and run." The ship shuddered as the first volley from the Hegemony vessels struck their shields. Jake's fingers danced across the weapons console, muscle memory from hundreds of combat drills taking over. The Nomad's hidden turrets emerged from their concealed housings, returning fire with surprising precision. "Direct hit on the lead vessel," Jake announced as his targeting found its mark. "Propulsion damaged but still operational." Another blast rocked the ship, harder this time. Sparks erupted from a nearby console. "Shields at 60%, reported the Arcadian tactical officer. "They're concentrating fire on our engine section." "They don't want the ship damaged," Nyara said, her voice tight. "They want to board us." Jake glanced at her, wondering if this attack had anything to do with the data crystal she possessed. The timing seemed too convenient to be coincidence. "Navari, status on jump calculations?" Dorn demanded. 3 minutes to completion, but we still need to clear the gravity net." Jake scored another hit, disabling the second vessel's main thrusters. 2 down, 1 to go. The ship lurched violently, throwing Jake against his restraints. Emergency lights flickered. "Direct hit to engineering," someone shouted. "We're losing power to the main drive." "Reroute through auxiliary systems," Dorn ordered. "Harrison, take out that last ship." Jake targeted the final Hegemony vessel, but his console suddenly went dark. Across the bridge, systems began shutting down one by one. "We're being hacked," Nyara announced, her fingers moving frantically across her still-functioning navigation console. "They're overriding our systems remotely." "How is that possible?" Dorn demanded. "Our firewalls are being bypassed," Nyara interrupted. "They know our protocols." Jake felt her eyes on him, a silent question in them. Was this about Earth's defense schematics? Was the Hegemony after the same information? "Captain," Nyara said suddenly, "I can trigger an emergency jump, but it's risky. We won't have time to calculate a precise exit point." "Do it," Dorn ordered without hesitation. "Sir," Jake interjected, "if we jump blind, we could end up inside a star, or—" "If the Hegemony boards us, we're dead anyway," Dorn cut him off. "Do it, Navari." Nyara's hands moved in a blur across her console. Overriding safety protocols. Emergency jump in 10 seconds? She looked up, her violet eyes finding Jake's. In that moment, something passed between them. Fear, determination, and something deeper that neither had time to acknowledge. "Hold on to something," she warned, as the ship's engines began to whine at a dangerous pitch. The stars outside the viewport stretched into lines, then exploded into a kaleidoscope of light as the Stellar Nomad tore its way into hyperspace, fleeing the hegemony vessels, but jumping blindly into the unknown. The Stellar Nomad emerged from hyperspace with a violent shudder that sent crew members sprawling across the bridge. Emergency klaxons wailed as backup systems struggled to compensate for cascading failures throughout the ship. "Damage report!" Captain Dorn bellowed, pulling himself back into his command chair. "Main engines offline," reported the engineering officer, a reptilian saurian whose scales had paled with stress. "Life support functioning at minimal capacity. Hull integrity compromised in sections 3 through 7. Jake picked himself up from the floor, wiping blood from a cut above his eye. The navigation console where Nyara had been working was sparking dangerously, but she was nowhere to be seen. "Where are we?" Dorn demanded. The tactical officer squinted at his partially functioning display. "Appears to be the Vega Drift, sir. Mining colony about 2 light years from our last position." "And the hegemony vessels?" "No sign of pursuit, but long-range sensors are offline." Jake felt a surge of relief that quickly gave way to concern. "Captain, where's Nyara?" Dorn's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Navari was thrown when we exited hyperspace. A medical team is attending to her." Without waiting for permission, Jake sprinted from the bridge toward the medical bay. The corridors were dim, lit only by emergency lighting that cast everything in an eerie red glow. Crew members worked frantically to repair damaged systems as he passed. When he reached medical, he found Nyara conscious but pale, a medic treating a nasty gash on her forehead. Her white hair was stained pink with blood, but her eyes brightened when she saw him. "You're alive," she said simply. "So are you." Jake moved to her side, ignoring the curious glance from the medic. "How bad?" "Concussion, 3 broken ribs, and a sprained wrist," the medic answered for her. "Nothing our regenerator can't fix, but it'll take time." "Which we don't have," Nyara added, wincing as she sat up straighter. "The jump damaged our navigation matrix. Aye, without it. We're sitting ducks if the hegemony tracks us here." The medic frowned. "You need rest, Navigator." "What I need is to get this ship operational," Nyara countered, sliding off the examination table despite the medic's protests. She swayed slightly, and Jake instinctively steadied her with an arm around her waist. "The captain's organizing repair teams," Jake told her. "We're near a mining colony called Vega Drift." Nyara's violet eyes widened. "Vega Drift? That's convenient." "Meaning?" She glanced at the medic who was pretending not to listen. "Not here. Help me back to my cabin." Against his better judgment, Jake helped Nyara through the corridors to her quarters. The ship limped along on auxiliary power, gravity fluctuating occasionally as they walked. When they reached her cabin, the door slid open with a reluctant groan. Inside, the room was in disarray. Items thrown from shelves, her bed askew from its moorings. Jake helped her to sit, then retrieved a medkit from her bathroom. "Convenient how?" he asked, cleaning the dried blood from her forehead with gentle strokes. Nyara winced but didn't pull away. "Vega Drift is independent, not aligned with the Coalition or the hegemony. It's also a known hub for information trading." "You think the hegemony attacked us for the data crystal?" Jake stated rather than asked. "I know they did." She caught his hand, stopping his ministrations. "Jake, that crystal doesn't just contain Earth's defense schematics, it has evidence of hegemony infiltration in Earth's government." Jake stared at her, processing this revelation. "You're not just a navigator, are you?" A small smile played at her lips despite her injuries. "Just like you're not just a cargo handler." The ship lurched suddenly, throwing Jake forward. He caught himself with his hands on either side of her, their faces inches apart. For a moment, the urgency of their situation faded, replaced by the memory of their night together and the questions that had followed. "We need to talk to the captain," Jake said, not moving away. "If the hegemony is tracking that crystal—" "They're tracking me," Nyara interrupted. The crystal is encoded to my genetic signature. That's why I stole it, to keep it from them. You stole it? Jake pulled back slightly. From whom? From the hegemony operative who infiltrated the coalition embassy on Navaria. Her voice was steady despite her obvious pain. I was supposed to deliver it to Earth intelligence, but my contact was compromised. I needed a way off world quickly, so I took a position on the Nomad. And then I showed up, Jake said, pieces falling into place. A human with obvious military training joining a random cargo hauler? Nyara's laugh was strained. I thought you were sent to extract me or the crystal. When you didn't make contact, I decided to investigate personally. By seducing me? Jake's tone was more amused than accusatory. Her violet eyes met his directly. That wasn't planned. That was just a... She trailed off, uncharacteristically hesitant. Just the two of us, Jake finished for her, echoing her words from that first night. The moment hung between them, charged with unspoken feelings and the weight of their shared predicament. The ship groaned around them, damaged systems protesting their continued operation. Captain Dorn to all senior staff, the intercom crackled. Report to the bridge immediately. We're being hailed by Vega Drift authorities. Jake helped Nyara to her feet. Can you walk? I've navigated through worse, she replied with a grimace that tried to be a smile. As they made their way back through the corridors, Jake's mind raced with implications. If Nyara was telling the truth, the data crystal was vital to Earth's security, but reaching Earth from their current position in a damaged ship with the hegemony hunting them. Whatever happens, Nyara said quietly as they approached the bridge, I need you to trust me, just for a little longer. Jake looked down at her, this alien woman who had upended his mission and possibly saved his life. Despite everything, he found himself nodding. I trust you, he said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. The bridge doors slid open, revealing Captain Dorn's intense conversation with a holographic projection of a grizzled miner, the apparent authority of Vega Drift. As Jake and Nyara entered, all eyes turned to them, and Jake had the distinct impression they were walking into yet another complication in their already complex situation. Well, if it isn't Nyara Navari, drawled the holographic figure on the bridge. The mining colony administrator was a burly man with a cybernetic eye that glowed faintly blue against his weathered face. Thought you'd sworn off this sector after the Proxima incident. Nyara stiffened beside Jake. Hello, Maddox. Still running this floating scrap heap? Captain Dorn glanced between them. You two know each other? Maddox and I have a history, Nyara replied carefully. The administrator's laugh was harsh. That's one way to put it. Your navigator here cost me a fortune in lost contracts when she exposed my dealings to the Navarian High Council. Illegal weapons trafficking tends to upset governments, Nyara shot back. Maddox's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused. And yet here you are, needing my help. Ironic, isn't it? Dorn cleared his throat. Administrator Maddox, we require urgent repairs. We're prepared to pay. Credits don't interest me, Maddox interrupted, his gaze fixed on Nyara. But information does, specifically Navarian jump point algorithms. The bridge fell silent. Jake glanced at Nyara, whose face had gone carefully blank. Those are classified by Navarian law, she said evenly. And worth every risk, Maddox countered. With those algorithms, independent colonies like Vega could establish trade routes without relying on either the coalition or the hegemony. Or sell them to the highest bidder, Jake interjected, earning a sharp look from Dorn. Maddox's holographic form turned toward Jake, studying him with interest. A human out here? Interesting company you're keeping these days, Nyara. The algorithms are non-negotiable, Captain Dorn stated firmly. Name another price. Maddox stroked his beard thoughtfully. Very well. I'll allow your ship to dock for repairs, but it'll cost you 5,000 tritium credits, plus... His eye whirred again. I want the human. Excuse me, Jake and Dorn spoke simultaneously. For negotiations only, Maddox clarified with a smirk. Earth has recently opened exclusive mining rights in the Sol asteroid belt. A human representative could help Vega Drift secure favorable terms. I'm just a cargo handler, Jake protested. With military-grade combat reflexes and tactical training? Maddox laughed. I monitored your performance against those hegemony ships. You're no ordinary cargo jockey. Dorn turned to Jake with a questioning look. Before Jake could respond, Nyara stepped forward. I'll give you something better than algorithms, she said. Intelligence on hegemony patrol routes through the Vega sector for the next 6 months. Maddox's eyebrow raised. And how would you have access to that? Nyara tapped her temple. I have my sources, plus I'll personally assist your navigation team for the duration of our stay. The administrator considered this, his cybernetic eye scanning rapidly. Throw in the humans' negotiation services and we have a deal. After a tense moment, Dorn nodded. Agreed. Send docking coordinates. As the hologram disappeared, Dorn rounded on Nyara. Navigation team, we need you repairing our systems. I can do both, she assured him, but we need time, and this buys us that. And you, Dorn turned to Jake, what exactly are your qualifications that make you so valuable to Maddox? Jake exchanged a glance with Nyara. I may have some diplomatic experience. Dorn's 4 eyes narrowed, but he merely grunted. Report to me after docking. Both of you. He stalked away, leaving Jake and Nyara alone on the bridge. Diplomatic experience? Nyara asked quietly. Coalition intelligence, Jake admitted. I was sent to investigate rumors of hegemony infiltration. Finding you was unexpected. Nyara's lips quirked. Seems we've both been keeping secrets. Speaking of which, Jake lowered his voice. Hegemony patrol routes? I memorized them before stealing the crystal, she explained. Standard intelligence protocol. Jake shook his head in admiration. You're full of surprises. You haven't seen anything yet, she replied with a hint of her usual playfulness, despite her injuries. 4 hours later, the Stellar Nomad was docked at Vega Drift, a sprawling collection of interconnected asteroids and habitation modules that housed nearly 10,000 miners, traders, and those seeking to disappear from official records. Repair crews swarmed over the damaged ship while Jake and Nyara prepared to meet with Maddox. In Nyara's cabin, which had been hastily restored to some semblance of order, Jake watched as she changed into a fresh jumpsuit, trying not to stare at the intricate patterns that seemed to pulse beneath her skin when she moved. Maddox is dangerous, she warned, wincing as she pulled the jumpsuit over her bandaged ribs. He presents himself as a simple administrator, but he has connections throughout the sector. Including hegemony, Jake asked, helping her zip the back of her suit. Especially hegemony. They pay well for information. Her eyes met his in the mirror. We need to be careful. If he recognizes the value of what I'm carrying. Jake's hands lingered at her shoulders. We'll get through this. Get the ship repaired, then make a run for coalition space. Nyara turned to face him, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her body. Why are you helping me? Your mission was to investigate, not to become involved. Maybe I like being involved, he replied, one hand moving to gently brush a strand of white hair from her face. With you. Something vulnerable flickered in her violet eyes. Jake, what happened between us was real, he finished for her, at least for me. The moment stretched between them, the air charged with unspoken emotions and the lingering heat of their first night together. Despite the danger surrounding them, or perhaps because of it, Jake found himself drawn to her even more strongly than before. Nyara's communicator chimed, breaking the spell. Maddox is waiting, she said reluctantly. As they prepared to leave, Jake caught her hand. When this is over, when we're safe, we should finish this conversation. A smile played at her lips, reminiscent of that first night when she'd closed her cabin door with that knowing smirk. I'd like that. They stepped out into the corridor, presenting a united front despite their secrets and uncertainties. Whatever awaited them on Vega Drift, hegemony spies, Maddox's schemes, or the complicated path to Earth, they would face it together. Maddox's office hung suspended between 2 massive asteroids, connected by transparent tubes that offered dizzying views of the mining operations below. The administrator himself sat behind a desk, fashioned from what appeared to be the hull plating of a derelict warship, his cybernetic eye whirring constantly as it scanned Jake and Nyara. Comfortable accommodation? He asked with false hospitality. Your ship should be operational within 36 hours. Generous timeline, Jake remarked, noting the tension in Nyara's posture beside him. Almost as if you're in no hurry to see us leave. Maddox's smile didn't reach his organic eye. Perceptive, I've always appreciated humans' directness. He leaned forward. So let's be direct. My sensors detected an unusual energy signature emanating from your ship, specifically from Navigator Navari's quarters. Jake maintained a neutral expression while Nyara's fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on the armrest of her chair. Mining equipment is sensitive to all sorts of radiation, she replied smoothly. Navarian navigation tools use exotic particles for calibration. Bullshit, Maddox said pleasantly. That signature matches hegemony encryption technology, the same technology they use for their most classified data storage. He tapped a console, bringing up a holographic display of the Stellar Nomad with a pulsing light indicating Nyara's cabin. Whatever you're carrying is valuable enough for 3 hegemony cutters to risk an interception in neutral space. Jake shifted strategies. If you know that much, you also know harboring us puts Vega Drift at risk. Risk creates opportunity, Maddox countered. I want what she's carrying. And if we refuse? Nyara asked coolly. Maddox's cybernetic eye flashed. Then I inform my hegemony contacts that you're here. They're offering a substantial bounty. Or, Jake interjected, you could consider a more profitable arrangement. Both Maddox and Nyara turned to him with surprised expressions. I'm listening, Maddox said cautiously. The data Nyara carries exposes hegemony infiltration of Earth's government, Jake explained. If that information reaches coalition intelligence, the hegemony loses their foothold in the Sol system. Which benefits me how? Maddox asked, though his interest was evident. Earth controls the richest mining operations in 3 sectors, Jake continued. With hegemony influence removed, new contracts would be negotiated. As the human representative who helped secure this intelligence, I could ensure Vega Drift receives priority consideration. Maddox leaned back, considering. Tempting, but the hegemony pays in certainties, not possibilities. There's more, Nyara added unexpectedly. While working with your navigation team, I discovered something disturbing. She produced a small data pad. Vega Drift's long-range sensors have been recording unusual movement patterns in the outer system, ships appearing and disappearing at regular intervals. Maddox frowned. A sensor malfunction. A cloaking field, Nyara corrected. The hegemony is using your colony as a staging ground for their fleet, without your knowledge or consent. Jake watched Maddox's face carefully as the administrator reviewed the data. The man's expression darkened. If this is accurate, Maddox said slowly, they're positioning for a major offensive. The only valuable target in this direction is Earth, Jake finished grimly. They're planning an invasion. A heavy silence fell over the office. Jake could almost see the calculations running behind Maddox's eyes. Profit margins, survival odds, potential alliances. I need to verify this, Maddox finally said, rising from his desk. Wait here. As soon as the door closed behind him, Nyara turned to Jake. How did you know about the fleet? I didn't, he admitted, but it makes sense. Why else would they risk exposing their Earth operatives by coming after the crystal so aggressively? Nyara's violet eyes widened. They're accelerating their timeline. The crystal doesn't just expose their agents, it contains the complete invasion strategy? Which means we have less time than we thought, Jake said, moving to the window to scan the docking bay below. His blood ran cold at what he saw. And we have company. 3 figures in nondescript clothing were approaching the Stellar Nomad, their movements too purposeful to be casual dock workers. Hegemony agents, Nyara confirmed, joining him at the window. They must have been here already, waiting for a target of opportunity. Or Maddox sent a message before meeting with us, Jake suggested darkly. Either way, we need to move. Nyara activated her communicator. Captain Dorn, we have hostiles approaching the ship. Secure the crystal and prepare for immediate departure. Static answered her. They're jamming communications, Jake realized. We're on our own. The door slid open, and they spun to find Maddox returning with 2 armed guards. Jake tensed, ready for a fight, but Maddox's expression was grim rather than triumphant. Your information checks out, he said tersely. Hegemony vessels have been using a blind spot in our sensor grid. They've been playing me for a fool. Then help us, Nyara urged. Your colony is at risk too. Maddox nodded to his guards, who lowered their weapons. I've accelerated your repairs. The Nomad can launch in 3 hours. My people will create a distraction to draw off the hegemony agents. Why the sudden change of heart? Jake asked suspiciously. Self-preservation, Maddox replied bluntly. I've made my fortune playing both sides, but I'm not suicidal. If the hegemony takes Earth, the coalition falls and independents like Vega Drift become irrelevant. A proximity alarm blared throughout the station. Maddox's console lit up with warning indicators. 3 hegemony destroyers just dropped out of hyperspace, he announced. They're demanding I surrender you and the crystal. Jake and Nyara exchanged looks. Their options were rapidly dwindling. We need a diversion, Jake said, mind racing through tactical possibilities. Something big enough to cover our escape. Nyara's eyes suddenly brightened with inspiration. The mining charges in the eastern asteroid field, if detonated simultaneously, they'd create an electromagnetic pulse and debris field that would blind their sensors. Maddox finished, already inputting commands. Risky, but it might work. Get us to our ship, Jake insisted. We'll handle the rest. As they hurried through the station's corridors, alarms blaring around them, Jake pulled Nyara into an alcove, away from Maddox and his guards. If this goes sideways, he said urgently, I need you to know something. Nyara's eyes searched his face. Jake, there's no time. Make time, he insisted, taking her face gently in his hands. What happened between us? What's still happening? It's not just about the mission or survival. It's real. And if we make it through this, I want to see where it leads. For a moment, the chaos around them faded. Nyara's expression softened, the patterns beneath her skin pulsing with what Jake now recognized as emotion. Among my people, she said quietly, we have a saying, stars cross paths, but once in a cosmic lifetime. I never understood it until I met you. Their lips met in a brief but intense kiss, a promise amid uncertainty. When they pulled apart, determination had replaced vulnerability in Nyara's eyes. Let's save Earth, she said with a hint of her familiar smirk. Then we can discuss crossing paths more thoroughly. The corridor to Docking Base 7 erupted in weapons fire as Jake and Nyara sprinted the final stretch toward the Stellar Nomad. Maddox's diversion, a false alarm in the colony's residential sector, had drawn off most of the hegemony agents, but 3 remained, determined to prevent their escape. Jake ducked behind a cargo container, pulling Nyara down beside him as energy bolts sizzled overhead. 2 at the main entrance, 1 circling to flank us, he assessed calmly, his coalition training taking over. The ship's ramp is down, Nyara observed, peering around the edge. Someone's expecting us. A familiar voice crackled through their communicators. Harrison, Navari, if you can hear me, I've cleared the ship. Captain's down. Need immediate extraction. It was Krell, the Torian cargo chief. Jake met Nyara's eyes. Cover me! Before she could protest, he darted from cover, drawing the agent's fire while Nyara used the distraction to target the flanking agent with her compact blaster. Her shot found its mark, sending the hegemony operative sprawling. Jake rolled behind another container, coming up with his own weapon and taking down one of the remaining agents with 2 precise shots. The last agent, realizing he was outmatched, retreated toward the station's interior. Now, Jake shouted, and they made a final dash for the ship. Krell met them at the ramp, his massive frame blocking the entrance. Blood, not his own, stained his leathery skin. Captain took a hit defending the bridge. Med bays stabilized him, but he's out of commission. The crystal? Nyara asked urgently. Secure in your cabin. Engine repairs are at 80%. Enough for launch, not enough for confidence. The station's alarms shifted tone, and Maddox's voice echoed through the docking bay. Detonation sequence initiated in eastern asteroid field. All personnel clear blast radius. Repeat, all personnel clear blast radius. That's our cue, Jake said, hitting the ramp retraction control. Krell, get to engineering. Squeeze every ounce of power from those engines. What about you? The Torian asked. Jake glanced at Nyara. We're flying this bird out of here. As Krell lumbered toward engineering, Jake and Niara raced to the bridge. The captain's chair was empty, dark blue blood staining its surface. Without hesitation, Jake took the pilot's position, while Niara slid into her familiar navigation seat. "I've never actually piloted a ship this size," Jake admitted, as his hands flew over the controls. Niara's laugh was tight but genuine. "And I've never navigated a blind jump through an asteroid field during an electromagnetic pulse. A first for everyone today." The ship's engines roared to life as Jake disengaged the docking clamps. Through the viewport, they could see hegemony troops converging on their position, only to scatter as the first mining charges detonated in the distance. The shockwave rippled through the station, temporarily disabling systems and creating the perfect cover for their escape. "Hold on," Jake warned, gunning the thrusters. The Stellar Nomad lurched forward, scraping against the docking bay doors as they barely cleared the opening. Behind them, the cascade of explosions in the asteroid field created a spectacular light show and a massive debris cloud that would confuse sensors for hours. "We've got company," Niara announced, her eyes on the tactical display. "Two hegemony destroyers breaking off from the station, heading our way. Can we outrun them?" "Not a chance, but we might outmaneuver them." Her fingers danced across her console. "There's a dense section of the asteroid field ahead. The debris from the explosions is creating a navigational nightmare." Jake grinned. "Perfect!" He banked the ship hard, diving into the swirling chaos of rock and dust. The hegemony vessels followed, their superior engines quickly closing the gap. "They're charging weapons," Niara reported. "Let them," Jake replied, his focus absolute as he threaded the massive cargo ship through gaps that seemed impossibly small. "Plot me a course through the densest part." Niara looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "That's suicide." "Trust me," he said, meeting her eyes briefly. "Humans have a knack for the impossible." Something in his confidence must have convinced her, because she turned back to her console and began plotting the course. "Path uploaded to your station. May whatever gods you believe in help us." Jake's hands moved with preternatural precision, guiding the ungainly cargo ship through the asteroid field with a grace it was never designed to possess. Behind them, the hegemony destroyers fired, their energy weapons superheating asteroids that exploded into thousands of deadly fragments. "They're hurting us," Niara realized suddenly. "There's a third destroyer waiting on the other side of this debris field." Jake's mind raced through options. "Can you plot a jump from inside the field?" "That's never been done," she protested. "The gravitational distortions alone would—" "Can you do it?" he pressed. Niara stared at him for a long moment, then nodded once. "I'll need the crystal. Its computational power can supplement our damaged systems." While she worked, Jake continued their desperate flight through the asteroid field, each near misdrawing gasps from the bridge crew who had gathered to witness their escape. The pursuing destroyers were gaining, their superior maneuverability becoming evident as the debris thinned. "Jump calculations complete," Niara announced finally. "But Jake, this is beyond risky. The gravitational stresses could tear us apart." "Better than what awaits us if we're captured," he replied grimly. "Do it." Niara hesitated, then reached across the space between them to grasp his hand. "Together, then." Their fingers intertwined as she activated the jump sequence with her free hand. The stars outside stretched impossibly as the ship shuddered around them, straining against forces it was never designed to withstand. For one terrifying moment, it seemed the Nomad would indeed tear itself apart. Then reality snapped back into focus, and they were in open space, Earth's familiar blue sphere dominating the viewport. "We made it," Niara breathed, disbelief evident in her voice. "That should have been impossible." "Humanity specializes in the impossible," Jake replied with a weary smile, "especially when properly motivated." Coalition defense platforms were already moving to intercept them, but a quick transmission of Jake's identification codes transformed their approach from hostile to escort. Within hours, the Stellar Nomad was docked at Earth's orbital command station, the data crystal safely delivered to Coalition intelligence, and the crew debriefed on the impending hegemony threat. 3 days later, Jake found himself standing in a private observation lounge, watching Earth rotate slowly below. The Coalition fleet had already departed to intercept the hegemony invasion force, armed with the intelligence from Niara's crystal. Early reports suggested the hegemony commanders were in disarray, their carefully planned surprise attack now facing a fully prepared defense. The door slid open behind him, and he knew without turning who had entered. "The coalition has officially granted me asylum," Nyara said, coming to stand beside him at the viewport, "and a rather generous consultant position with their navigation corps." Jake turned to look at her. She'd abandoned her jumpsuit for Earth fashion, a simple blue dress that complemented her pale pink skin and white hair, now worn loose around her shoulders. "Suits you," he commented, "though I miss the ponytails." Her laugh was lighter than he'd ever heard it, free from the tension of their ordeal. "I thought I'd try something new, a new planet, new life. Any regrets?" he asked, genuinely curious. Nyara considered this, her violet eyes reflecting Earth's oceans below. "My people value knowledge and discovery above all else. I've discovered more in these past weeks with you than in all my years before." She turned to face him fully. "No regrets." Jake stepped closer, drawn to her as he had been since that first night in her cabin. "What was that saying again? About stars crossing paths?" "The stars cross paths, but once in a cosmic lifetime," she quoted softly. "I'm thinking we might be the exception to that rule," he murmured, his hands finding her waist. Her smile was reminiscent of that first night, confident, alluring, full of promise. "Coalition Intelligence has assigned me a human liaison to help with my transition to Earth, someone who understands both worlds." "Lucky liaison," Jake remarked, playing along. "I requested someone specific," she continued, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. "Someone who's proven rather adept at navigating complex situations." Jake laughed. "Is that what we're calling it now?" Nyara's expression grew more serious. "What we have, it shouldn't work. Different species, different worlds, different everything. And yet, he agreed, understanding perfectly. She leaned up to kiss him, and in that moment, Jake knew with absolute certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, cultural differences, biological quirks, the inevitable complications of interspecies romance, they would face them together. When they finally parted, Nyara's eyes sparkled with mischief. She took his hand and led him toward the door. "You know," Shia said with that familiar smirk he'd come to adore, "my new Earth quarters are quite spacious and secure." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" As the door slid closed behind them, Nyara's voice carried the same playful confidence it had that first night aboard the Stellar Nomad. "It's just the two of us here, and this time there's no one chasing us across the galaxy." Jake pulled her close, his reply a whisper against her lips. "I wouldn't be so sure about that. I plan to chase you across as many galaxies as it takes." Her laughter, bright and clear, was all the answer he needed.